Good morning, and thank you for joining us. We are going to be disabling the chat because this will be recorded and posted on YouTube. Please keep your microphone muted to minimize background noise. We are going to be starting with Smart with AI this morning, learning practical tools to boost efficiency and spark innovation. My name is Hannah Jack. We also have Dorothy Carlson. We are both educational technology coaches here in Poway Unified. Today, we are going to take a look at the considerations and AI literacy. We are going to explore two Canva AI tools, Design for Me and Code for Me, and then we are going to be sharing some resources. As a result of today's webinar, we have two outcomes. We are hoping to build an understanding of AI literacy for safe, ethical, and responsible use. And we're also going to develop an understanding of how AI can be used for creating resources and teacher efficiency. We also wanted to highlight that AI has many other uses, such as providing student feedback, personalizing learning, and gamifying lessons. If you'd like to explore any of these applications further, you can check out this chart, which you will find in the AI resources section of our Digital Citizenship Canvas course. Now, before we get into our AI tools, we always want to start with considerations. First, it's crucial for educators to implement lessons and discussions about AI. And one way that we can accomplish this is through digital citizenship. Digital citizenship is a critical set of skills that students need to have to navigate the ever-changing digital landscape. As AI becomes increasingly integrated into our lives, students must grasp concepts such as the impact of their digital footprint, privacy, and ethical decision-making. Common Sense Media provides teachers with ready-to-teach lessons that address the 6 pillars of digital citizenship. They have also recently released AI literacy lessons for grades 6 to 12. We also want to make sure to lead with empathy. This means understanding that students approach AI with different feelings and experiences, from excitement to uncertainty. But empathy alone isn't enough. Students also need clear guidance about what appropriate use of emerging technologies looks like. Without that guidance, they won't know what's expected of them. By combining empathy with clear expectations, we create trust and help students use AI as a tool to support learning rather than a shortcut or replacement. AI also brings the significance of data management, privacy, and security in education to the forefront. Many teachers are eager to implement the latest and greatest platform, but they need to understand how AI learns from data, how data can be used, and the laws that govern student data privacy. We never want to enter personally identifiable information, sensitive information, private information, or legally protected information into generative AI platforms. For required coursework, it's important to ensure that the AI tools that we are asking students to use have data privacy agreements, or DPAs, in place. For example, a common platform is ChatGPT, but this platform does not actually have a data privacy agreement, and it requires parent permission. If you have a platform you're interested in using, you can check if it has a DPA by emailing edtech@powayusd.com. Finally, it's important to note that AI may produce biased or incorrect information because large language models produce and pull information that could be biased or outdated. It can even hallucinate and provide hallucinated answers. It's important for us as educators to carefully evaluate the sources and outputs and evaluate them to make sure that what we are sharing with students is accurate. By modeling this critical thinking, we help students recognize bias, question information, and use AI responsibly. Overall, your judgment matters. Using AI for initial work, but making sure to add your final touch, review for bias and accuracy, and contextualize appropriately.
Thank you so much, Hannah. The review of the considerations is so important to keep in mind before you jump into that tool. So, speaking of tools, we're going to take a look at Teachable Machines. This is a free product put out by Google that helps people understand how machine learning works. Machine learning is at the base for all large language models that we're familiar with, like ChatGPT and some of the tools that we're going to model today, like Canva, Design for Me, and Code for Me. So, this is also a lesson you can include in your classrooms to help students better understand what is AI and how does it work. It's fun, engaging, and it takes maybe 10 minutes. So here's how it works. These slides are available on the Digital Citizenship Resources page, and you would open up that teachable machine and then decide or have it decide, are you a dinosaur, sloth, or butterfly? So you can see my results down at the bottom of the page here, and they're vacillating between dinosaur and sloth. But if I move closer, I'm more sloth. But if I put my hand up, ooh, I'm more butterfly. And it begs the question, how do you know? Or rather, how does the AI know if I'm a dinosaur, sloth, or butterfly? What this slide puts out is how that AI model was trained. There are three sets of data, dinosaur, sloth, and butterfly, that I created and then provided data for. In the dinosaur set, you can see there are 392 image samples. 394 for sloth, and 377 for butterfly. All of those pieces of data have a pattern in common, and that's what machine learning does, is looks for patterns. So you can see in the dinosaur data set, it's fairly far away from the camera. In the sloth data set, it's about midway, and in the butterfly, faces are very, very, very close. I then trained the data by just pressing the train data button to look for those patterns. And then I get a novel result with a new image, depending on how that image meets the established patterns in the data. So why does this matter? Machine learning is how machines like AI think and learn. And it's different than how humans learn. Humans tend to evaluate. So they would look at this picture and notice there's a face. There's a person wearing a blazer. There's a ceiling with fluorescent lights in the background. That kind of looks like an office or maybe a classroom. This person, because of what they're wearing, maybe looks like a professional. So when I ask what is in this picture, that context matters because they're evaluating the details that they notice in the context that they're familiar with. Machine learning doesn't know about context. Instead, it analyzes. And instead of recognizing a face or maybe lights that look like a classroom, it breaks it down into the colors that are present, the brightness of each pixel and the color in that pixel, the location of those pixels, and what pattern might be established by all of that pixelation. And then when it's presented with a new picture, instead of saying, oh, that also looks like a classroom, machine learning looks for patterns in pixelation. And that's why it can push out a result that I'm a dinosaur instead of a teacher, because there is no context. The no context is important to keep in mind when you're working with AI, because you want to be able to provide context, and any outcomes that you might create with AI, you'll need to use in context. And that's where your judgment really matters. Is this outcome appropriate for the audience I'm about to put out? Is it accurate? Are there any biases I need to evaluate for? Because AI doesn't have the context to make those judgment calls. If you choose to use Teachable Machine with your students, it's that quick, fun, interactive, am I a dinosaur experience? And then there's follow-up activities to practice their knowledge that they now have about how AI works. These are lessons provided by Common Sense Education. There are 9 lessons that take 15 to 20 minutes. You can do all 9. You can cherry pick what best fits your classroom context, everything from what is AI and how is it trained to understanding the bias and how that bias affects our lives. There's plenty to learn and discuss in these 9 lessons, and they're quick and easy to implement. Okay, let's dive into some tools now that we have a little bit more literacy around how AI works and how to best work with AI. So we're going to dive into tools that speak to teacher efficiency. So some ways you might use AI for teacher efficiency is creating some more time for small groups in your class or working with individuals. AI might also reduce your workloads. It might also increase your ability to support students' needs and personalize learning to what they need at that moment. It also can provide actionable real-time data to inform instruction. So these are just some of the ways to work with AI. And I want to point out that AI cannot replace a teacher. A teacher is essential to a student's learning experience. AI can be like a teacher's assistant or a collaborator to help you do what you do even better. So let's dive into one of those tools. Canva Design for Me. So you might be familiar with Canva as a design platform. You can access it in your My Plan dashboard. And within Canva now, there are some AI features. One of them is Design for Me. So Design for Me is useful for creating slide decks, handouts, posters inside minutes instead of maybe hours that it's been taking before. You can also create project templates. So like maybe a template for a research or long-term assignments that might help students with the process or time management, student portfolios, storyboards for narratives or any kind of marketing campaigns. And then it also is just a useful tool, excuse me, to jumpstart creativity because you can prototype a design or prototype an assignment or a slide deck and take a look at, oh, is that really what I wanted? Without spending all the hours to get to that prototype. So we're going to start with an example for a math class. So here's our sample prompt. I'm going to ask Design for Me to create a slide deck on quadratic functions that has some basic information about quadratic functions. I want it to be appropriate for 10th grade students. I want it to include how to graph, solve, and model quadratic equate functions, excuse me. And I also want some real world examples for the use of quadratic functions so that students understand how this applies outside of the classroom. And then I'm also asking for 4 specific problems for students to solve related to video games because I have a class that just loves video games. And then I want those problems to be a word problem with values, equations, and specific directions. Okay, so before we jump into that, I also want to point into a resource for prompting. Prompting is part of the data that AI works off of to get you exactly what you want. So just like we learned earlier with AI literacy, how the data you put in matters for the patterns that it detects and creates an output for you, the more data you put into your prompt, the better output you will get. So if you click on this prompting AI resource, you'll be taken to a helpful how to create a prompt examples where you can include a role, audience, context, task and details, and just a reminder about what Hannah talked about earlier, checking for accuracy and bias. There's also some prompt examples and a sentence frame. So if you're trying out AI and you're not quite getting what you want, check out that prompting example to help. Okay, so using this sample prompt, I'm going to go to Canva. In Canva, your dashboard will look similar to this, and you'll have 3 options across the top. To use Canva AI, you'll click on Canva AI, and then to use Design for Me, you'll click on Design for Me. That's where you can then enter your prompt. I just copy pasted the prompt we just went over, and then you can either hit enter or the submit button to generate. And you can see it'll start building for you. It'll start with thinking and then start producing a product. For the sake of time, I pre-populated it with that exact same prompt. So you can see I've got create a slide deck on the quadratic functions. And then what it did is it created a couple slide decks for me to prove. So I'm looking at them in terms of look, feel, it'll slide through for me. And this is the one that I liked the best, but I want to take a closer look at it. So I'm going to click on it. And then I can look through more specifically what's on that slide. Maybe I don't like this slide, but I do like this one because it defines what it is. And I do like this one because it's got some key terms in there that I want students to be sure they have. So I'm kind of going to scroll through. I'm really interested in those problem sets that it created for students. So student challenge. Ooh, okay, I like this problem, but the picture is not what I was hoping for. So in that case, you can click on Use Canva Editor. And what that will do is open up a design where you can then edit and change, say, this picture, what is in that particular design so that it's a little more engaging for students. It's a little closer to what you wanted. I think this one would probably be better. I'm going to just drop that in there. Okay, yes, that works much better for my slide. You can also go in here and change any of the problem sets that you may want to be different or just adjust slightly. So I'm going to take us back to our design. And then once I've gone through that, I've edited it, I really like it. I decide, instead of those student problems in the slide deck, I'd really like that on a handout. So then what I can do is ask for a handout with the problem sets on this slide deck and include the slide deck I just edited. And it pushed out those problem sets for me. But it didn't quite understand the handout part. So yeah, this is helpful. I like these problem sets for students. They're all related to video games like I wanted, but it's not on a handout. So you may need to iterate a little bit. And finally it got, oh, okay, I get it now. You want a classroom handout with this on it. So just like the slide deck, I can click on it. I can use this Canva editor to then go in and edit any of the problems that I would like. I can also use the Canva editor to then provide this to students. So from here, I can click on share, and then I can download it to print it. I can create a public view link to make it available to students. I can also use the embed link here to embed it in a page in Canvas. And I'll demonstrate that with our next tool. So just to recap what that process looked like, we prompted and created with Design for Me. We iterated a little bit because it provided a solid rough draft, but I wanted a few details to change and make it just right for my classroom. I did that both in the chat by asking it for different things like a handout. And then I did that in the Use Canva editor to get the details really specifically what I wanted for my classroom. And then to use with students, I could choose how I want to push that out, whether it's printing or putting it on Canvas. A quick note about Canva Design for Me. Canva AI in general is optimized for originality. So if you're looking for something new that you want to create. If you're looking to use what you already have, but present it in maybe a more engaging way, I'd recommend using the templates instead. And then that way you can copy paste the work or the content that you have already into a more engaging design. Canva AI will create something new for you instead of just reusing what you already have. So just keep that in mind when you're choosing Canva Design for Me or perhaps maybe a template. Okay, so that's Canva Design for Me. It can cut down that creation time for you and give you more time with students. But wait, there's more. There's also Canva Code for Me. Canva Code for Me is another AI feature in Canva. You can vibe code, which means you're not actually using any coding language. You're using just regular old language to create experiences for students. And then Code for Me can help you provide more opportunities for choice, more opportunities for iterative practice. And it's also a great way to jumpstart creativity by prototyping something. Because if you're like, I want to make something more interactive, but I'm just not quite sure how to get there, Code for Me is a great tool to use to see what's possible and what will work best in your classroom. So let's take a look at a sample prompt for Code for Me. In this one, we're going to switch subject areas and go to US history. So we're going to create an interactive timeline for the American Revolutionary War, appropriate for 11th grade students. We're going to include the events listed below. And then for each event, I would like an image for students to click on to either read a biography or read a primary source that relates to that event. If you notice, I didn't list the events in this prompt, but I'll show you what it looks like here in just a moment. So let's go take a look at Canva Code for Me. Okay, so we have our prompt here in our Code for Me prompt box. It's very similar to the sample prompt we just went over, and you can see I have some dates listed here. I'm going to go ahead and hit generate, and then Canva will start coding for me. So you can see the code being generated on the side. Depending on the sophistication of what you ask for, it may take a minute or two all the way up to 10 minutes. Here's my prompt with with my timeline dates that I wanted. And then I'm going to come down here and it says I'll create, and it'll give me version 1. So if I click on that version, I'll be able to take a look at what that looks like. And it's pretty good. So I can click on things and I like it. But I can click, and then for biography, it's got a short biography, but it's not quite what I wanted. I wanted it to be a little bit more interactive. And I wanted it to maybe look like an actual timeline. So I'm going to iterate here again and ask it to make a timeline. I want those biographies to be a little bit longer. I also want it to look more vertical, right? Give it a second to load. There we go. That was closer to what I wanted. And then you can keep iterating with Canva and ask it to remove things to make it look a certain way that you want. Just like we saw in Design for Me, you can then use in a design. And then you get a choice of website, presentation, doc, or whiteboard. Whiteboard gives you the most options. So I would suggest using a whiteboard, but you can always use it in a doc. You can always put it in a presentation if that better fits what you are looking for. And so this is what it looks like in a whiteboard. And you might notice that when it loads, it might load so that you can't see it. And you're like, oh no, where's the rest of my timeline? That's okay. Just click on it. And if you can pull down and show as much or as little as you would like. Same options as before for using this with students. You can come up here to share. And this will give you different options where you can download it, provide a link to it, or embed it with this Canva this HTML embed code. So I'm clicking on embed. I'm going to make that embed public. And then you want this HTML embed code. You just copy. And then what you can do is include it in your Canvas pages. So for example, we can go to our Canvas page and include it for students to access right as part of an assignment. So I've got my experience here, and then what I'd like students to do, and they can click right from here, choose to read that biography. All right. So I just want to go back through that process we just used. We prompt and created. We iterated to get it just like what we wanted. We then chose how we wanted to move it out of the chat and use it in a design. And then we chose how we wanted to use it with students. For me, I wanted to put it on a Canvas page because that is how my students are used to learning the most. But again, you can provide a link to it, whatever works best for you. And you can code just about anything. You can code games, you can code thinking routines. In this case, I coded a timeline. Um, a quick note about Code for Me is that Code for Me designs are optimized for creativity and interaction. They're not really optimized for data collection. So Code for Me experiences are great for moments where students need practice, they need choice in how they maybe take in content. Um, but outcomes for what students are doing in that Code for Me design are not available. So there are places where it's okay that students maybe make this choice or that choice because you're not collecting any assessment data on the Code for Me designs. You're giving students a learning experience where they get to practice something. All right. So thank you so much for joining us. We want to make sure that you have all the possible resources to dive into some AI for teacher efficiency. There is our digital citizenship course where there are new refreshed digital citizenship resources. You'll just go to your digital citizenship course and click on AI resources. That AI resources page is here with different topics across the top. That AI literacy lesson we did earlier is right here. It's ready to implement with students. You just click on it and open that template for your own classroom. The data privacy pieces that Hannah was discussing earlier are under data privacy. There's much more information, a quick video about data privacy in PUSD and that DPA or data privacy agreement. We've also got age-appropriate AI tips down here. Hannah mentioned ChatGPT. Just a reminder that under 13 should not have any access to ChatGPT, and 13 to 17, it's only with parent permission, and they don't have a DPA with PUSD. So using another tool that does have a DPA for your classroom experiences is the way to go. And you can always email edtech@PUSD to check, does this platform have a data privacy agreement? That email is right here. Then we also have our PUSD Learning Center. That is another Canvas resource that you have. So if you click on the PUSD Learning Center and then digital resources, you can have access to all of our webinars. Our past one was Canvas, and then we'll be posting a recording here for AI and education. I also want to just point out that email edtech@PowayUSD. If this maybe lit a light bulb up and you're like, gosh, this would really be great, but I could use some more specifics for my content area or maybe questions my team has, please email edtech@powayusd.com. We would love to come out and work with your team and help them with AI in education. You can also follow us on Instagram, and you can find us on YouTube where all of these webinar recordings will be posted as well. Thank you so much for joining us, and have a great day. Bye, everybody.